Hi there, Mrs. Rye here. I'm going to explain, by request, week 26 homework number 4 on Monday. It is an system of equations problem, word problem. So let's look at this. It says, the fabulous footballers scored an incredible 55 points during last night's game. Interestingly, the number of field goals was one more than twice the number of touchdowns. The fabulous footballers earned 7 points for each touchdown and 3 points for each field goal. Write a system of equations that represents the situation. Assume that T represents the number of touchdowns and F represents the number of field goals. Then determine how many touchdowns and field goals the fabulous footballers made last night. So we always have to go to the end of the problem, the end of the word problem, and figure out what our variables are going to represent. And in this particular problem, they tell us which variables to use and what they will represent, which is nice. So let me write this down on my paper. This is number 4. And again, this is homework week 26, Monday, number 4. So I'm looking at the variables they gave us. T is the number of touchdowns. We always have to establish what each letter stands for. It helps us keep track of everything that we need to find out and what we know. F represents the number of field goals. Then we have to go back into the paragraph and look at each sentence one by one and use the clues that tell us how to set up our equations so we can solve to get the answers. So the first sentence starts with telling us that they scored a total of incredible 55 points, total points. It doesn't say total, but that's how much was scored by the one team. So keep that kind of on the back burner as we move to the next sentence. It says, interestingly, the number of field goals was one more than twice the number of touchdowns. So this sentence right here gives us a clue as to how to set up an equation. It says the number of field goals, and if F is our field goals, it was one more than twice the number of touchdowns. One more than twice the number of touchdowns. 1 plus 2t. So we can actually translate the sentence directly into the equation. The next sentence will give us more clues. It says the fabulous footballers earned 7 points for each touchdown and 3 points for each field goal. So for each touchdown, for each field goal, that should tell you what operation you're going to be using. That means we're multiplying them. So for every touchdown and for every field goal, they're each worth a certain number of points, and that tells us that it's 7 for each touchdown and 3 for each field goal. And that back in the first sentence tells us that they scored a total of 55. So that's it. That's our system of equations. And once you have your system set up, you could choose any of the various methods to solve it. For instance, substitution, elimination, equal values method. It's up to you. Whatever is easiest and gives you the least amount of steps to solve it, that's what I would recommend. So I'm looking at substitution. Why this is a good reason to use, a good example to use substitution is that one of the variables is already by itself. The f is isolated. So that means you can take everything on the other side of the equation. And since you know f is equal to all this stuff, you could plug in all that stuff into the f in the other equation. So that's how you use substitution. That's what I'm going to write on the next line. So I'm taking this second equation, I'm going to rewrite it, but instead of writing 3 times f, I'm going to write 3 times 1 plus 2t. As you know, that's what we discovered from the other equation. And now we could solve for t. We've eliminated one of the variables, so let's solve for t. 7t, and then we're going to distribute the 3. So 3 times 1 is 3. And 3 times 2t is 6t equals 55. We do have like terms. We have 7t plus 6t, which is 13t, plus 3 equals 55. I want to subtract the 3. The goal is to isolate t. So 13t equals 52. When we divide by 13, t is equal to, and then you would probably need to use your calculator. So let me get my calculator, and I would have to divide 52 by 13. So let's see what we get. 52 divided by 13 is 4. Or if you're good at mental math, you'll be able to tell that the answer is 4. And what we just found out is that the number of touchdowns that was scored by the fabulous footballers was 4. 4 touchdowns. Did we answer the question that they wanted? It asks, determine how many touchdowns and field goals. Touchdowns and field goals. So we know touchdowns, we just need to find field goals. How would we do that? Well, if you know t, you can find f. And conveniently, we already have the equation set up to solve for f. So here I'm going to take this first equation and I'm going to solve it, because now I know what t is. So f equals 1 plus 2 times t, and since we know that t is 4, plugging in the 4, f is equal to 1 plus 2 times 4, which is 8, and f equals 9. We just found out the second piece of information that we need. And then you would normally write your answer in a word problem. You would write it in the form of a sentence. So 4 touchdowns and 9 field goals were scored. And that's it. I hope this helps. And you can't see that because my camera is cut off. There you go.